All right, here we are with Łukasz Franek, Director of the Public Transport Board in Krakow. Hello, thank you for being here.
Hello.
So
Hi.
first, I want to ask you, how long have you been with the Director of the Public Transport Board of Krakow?
Actually, it's almost 6 years, but previously, before 2018, there was one authority responsible for roads and transport. So I was the deputy director responsible for transport. And since 3 years, it's a board, it's a public transport dedicated authority. And yeah, it's also me. So altogether, it's 6 years.
Okay. And a personal question, are you also from Krakow?
Yeah, I was born in Krakow. For this primary school, I was living for 7 years in other city on Silesia region, and then I come back for the secondary school, and since then I live in the city, and yeah, I was born in the city.
Okay, you're true Krakowian. Okay, so let's dig into the questions here. So since we're still dealing with pandemic issues all over the world, I'm going to start with a question about the pandemic, about what types of patterns your team observed with public transport, I guess, say starting as early as spring 2020 up until now.
Yeah, it was the same situation. I think a common situation for every city. So a huge change in number of passengers traveling, and it was like up to 80% less during the lockdown periods. And also, I think in last year autumn, we come back with number of passengers to, in my opinion, 80, even 85% of pre-pandemic time, which is, in my opinion, maybe not, let's say, success, but it's okay, because we as a PTA, we are a member of European Metropolitan Transport Agencies, so authorities, and when we exchange experiences and information about current situation with number of passengers, it's similar with cities like, I don't know, Copenhagen or around, yes, Paris and so on. And they used to say that, basing on some research, that 10% of passengers before pandemic, they will not come back to the public transport, not because they are afraid or they not. It's just there was a huge change in mobility behavior during the pandemic. So they changed their lifestyle, they changed their work, and they assume that 90% is maybe maximum. Of course, we need to fight for new passengers, yes. But anyway, I think the change was from 20% during the lockdowns to 80%. You know, to right now we get, of course, students at home. School children at home, so it's a decrease like before. But in my opinion, one major change since 1 year is that people, what we were working for, is that people get trust to travel by public transport, and they see that it's not, you don't have to be afraid, because it was different in before, because, for example, there were some statements from the government that don't travel by public transport, which was quite silly, because all the research which were taken didn't bring any proof that the risk is higher. So we are really happy that that this trust is coming back, and when we use masks and we travel with the regime, it's really safe. So that's the current situation, but we still fight for to come back, yes, to get this trust, not to lose it, and we really invite inhabitants to travel by public transport again.
Yeah, I understand. On a personal note, I love traveling by light rail in Krakow. It's wonderful. So that's very, it's great. There's a lot of options with the light rail and the trams. So there's an article, as I was reading about you, the article is called "How Are Krakow Residents Coming Together to Fight Air Pollution?" Euronews Screen, September 2019. And in that you noted that there are now 700 cars per 1,000 inhabitants, and the city was not built for this many cars. So what are some of your ideas for reducing car dependence in and around the city?
Yeah, it's true. It's when we are talking truthfully, not with too positive looking at the situation, is that we got almost 700 cars per 1,000 inhabitants. I think it was Gell or Penaloza who said that Poles are right now in favor with more motorization, that we have a romance with the cars. And in my opinion, it's true. It's a disaster from many point of views that we use cars too much, especially in cities. It's common for every city, a little bit different, but every city in Poland. And what is the difference between other cities and Krakow is that we got, in my opinion, we try to change the trend. Yes, that we are not at the stage when we can say, okay, the modal shift will be changed. People will stop buying and using cars so much. But we are in a current stage to convince people that it's not a good way and a good approach for the future if we want change our behavior. Yes. And of course, changing of behavior means that we need to provide solutions. We need to provide, on one hand, access restrictions or parking management, all the tools which are necessary to convince people that traveling by car is not the best idea, let's say, in a diplomatic way. But on the other hand, to create an alternative, a real alternative, so public transport, walking, cycling, and all these issues. And we try to do this, in my opinion, I hope, because of course, pandemic stops possibility to evaluate everything. But in my opinion, it's the changing of the trend is possible in Krakow, and I hope will happen. Of course, Krakow is a city with very fast growing city. So it is a matter of many thousands of new inhabitants every year. Yeah? So you can see that there are new cars because there are new inhabitants, but the goal is to travel by cars less and to make more freedom in the lifestyle from car dependency, yes, from this lifestyle which is current. And I hope that generation change, that climate care, air quality care will bring this change in the behavior, and I hope it will happen. But current situation is that, let's say, I hope we are at the peak, that it's not still growing, but that we are at the peak, and it will get a little bit down in next years. Otherwise, we'll stuck as a city from the mobility point of view. It will be very annoying to travel in the city, and of course, air quality will be poor, and so on. Yeah.
I found it interesting what you said about the Poles are in a romance with the fate chapter right now of romance with the car. And coming from America, you know, I know this romance very, very intimately. And yeah, when we moved to Poland, it was really interesting coming to Krakow for the first time and seeing the real sensibility in the city's bones for walkability. The city is quite walkable, I think, and public transportation, but then also the car dominates, the car culture. You know, it was really interesting, and it's a global issue. Many places are in this romance with the car stage now, whereas, you know, other places are. So that's the interesting challenge I find really to think about. And curious
but just to add something, it's of course it doesn't mean I didn't mean that we are just loving the cars, because especially when you go abroad, the cities, the large cities in Poland, the public transport, any alternatives are so poor that you need to use the car. Yes, you are
Right.
forced to use the car. So
Yep.
it's not that all people use the cars because they just love cars. It's just, of course, many times you don't have any alternative. So it will not be truth, it will say that it's only being in love in motorization. But nevertheless, in Krakow, we know thousands of examples of trips made by inhabitants which are in parallel to the tram network. So they use cars because it's more comfortable for them, because it's, I don't know, they have parking place at the work and so on. So they use cars to move for 1, 2, 3 kilometers, and they have alternative. Yes, and that's the problem in my opinion right now.
Right. So the romance thing, and I know that's maybe not the right word, but we see that more within the cities. And I do understand that outside of the major urban centers, there are often not viable alternatives. So people use cars because there isn't great pedestrian infrastructure or really reliable public transit.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, connecting to that, the next question I have, I saw a survey by Polish Smog Alarm that 1/3 of locals surveyed, I'm not sure if it was for Krakow or a wider region, said that they would switch to bikes if there was more cycle paths. So this is my observation. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I am quite new to Poland. But for example, when I go to Krakow, the city, and look around, there again, the walkability seems good, and public transit options seem very diverse. But cycling infrastructure doesn't seem as present, and also I don't see a real as much of a cycling culture. But maybe the two are interlinked. So is there an interest in this developing cycling? Is there a push for developing cycling infrastructure?
Yeah, we were a walkable city, in my opinion. I hope it's like that since many years. So the city center and the compact size of the city. So average length of the trip, like less than 4 kilometers. It gives the opportunity to walk, and at least before pandemic, almost 1/3 of inhabitants walk to work or to the school, to the university. Yeah? So, but on the other hand, we were not a cycling friendly city. We still missing a core part of the bicycle road network. Yes. So you cannot say that because there's, for example, in Polish cities, there's an indicator which gives, okay, how many bicycle paths were constructed each year. Yeah, there's, in Krakow, it was, I don't know, 10, 15 kilometers, in Warsaw, 50 kilometers. It doesn't matter until you don't have a network. Yes. There's no change that you have 5 new kilometers, but there's a gap of 1 kilometer next, and people won't use bicycle and travel by bicycle if there is a gap in the network. Yes, like in the street network, if you have a gap, you don't use a car if you cannot go further. So we are still constructing, and I hope pandemic brought a new opening of this situation. And when we introduced solutions with temporary bicycle lanes, it shows a great interest. It shows that it's true in practice, because someone might say, no, Poland is not a country with our weather to cycle and so on. But when we introduced these temporary bicycle lanes, we proved in practice that it's common in every place in the world. When you construct the infrastructure, cyclists show up, yeah, because then there is a possibility. It's like you mentioned, 30% at least of inhabitants says, if there's an infrastructure, I would at least try, yes, but I will not go on a bicycle on a 2-lane street with heavy vehicles and so on. It's logic. It's truth, yes. So we still are trying to fasten investment in cycling infrastructure to make a network, yes, to have maximum number of homes and workplaces close to the infrastructure to give people a possibility. But it's in front of us. It's still, I think there's a difference between inner city area when we do not construct because streets are already with speed limit 30 kilometers per hour, so with contraflows for cyclists and so on. So here, and we see every day, even right now when it's raining, when I look out of the window, there is many cyclists right now cycling, yes, with these weather conditions. But when you go outside of the city center, you need a dedicated infrastructure. You need to create a safe cycle roads. We have a plan of what we call 30 most important investments to be implemented, to be constructed within next maybe 5 years. It would be very optimistic scenario, but even if it's 5-7 years, then that is fine, because it would be much more than in past 5-7 years. Yes? So, and it will close the network. It will make a situation when you can go from point A to point B by bicycle if you want, of course. So actually, we want to try this because I think 90%, as far as I remember, maybe 80-90% of trips in Kraków, which is mostly flow, yes. So there are just hills on the south part of the city. Then we get up to 4 kilometers. So it's perfect for the cycling, yes. 4 kilometers trips are perfect. It's not Warsaw when you have from one part to the city to the second, it's like 20 kilometers. It's maximum 5-7 kilometers, and you are everywhere whenever you want. So Kraków, it might be a cycling city, but we need to finish this infrastructure. It's minimum, and it's a base scenario. Then we can talk about other issues.
Right. Were there any controversies when you try to suggest more bike paths, or?
Only when, during this temporary, when we introduced temporary lanes, which actually started to be right now regular, because there was a huge public debate last year about the solutions, but one of them on Grzegórzecka Street, which we took one lane for cars and give it to cyclists. It was discussed that no one, it's universal all around the world. No one will cycle. There are no cyclists. It's 1 per hour and so on. But we have introduced automatic counters, and they provide feedback that on these temporary lanes there's so many cyclists that is, I think, the second cycling corridor in the city, right? Wow. So it shows a huge demand on traveling, but people were not traveling before because there were no infrastructure, and it shows in practice. It's the best argument if you have when you provide, when people see that okay, people are traveling. Of course, it's not the same that because people think, okay, if there's 700 cars per hour traveling in the corridor on the street, and then shows up, I don't know, 100, 200 cyclists, right? That there's only, it's like specific thinking about democracy. If there is less people, then we don't care about them, yeah. So it's like it's stupid, but it's like that. Yes, there's only 200, so we don't care. But I always say we do not count how many pedestrians use the sidewalk in different parts of the city. It's just the infrastructure which should be implemented, which should be constructed for the inhabitants. It's just we don't care if it's 7, 10, or 500 people use this sidewalk. It's the infrastructure for the inhabitants, because they need to have a choose if they want to use a car, they have a car lane. If they want to walk, they have a sidewalk. If they want to cycle, they need a cycle path or cycle lane. So it's the same here. If there is 200, imagine what would be if they would choose a car, yeah? Another 200 cars in this corridor, right? So we should invite them to cycle. And these arguments, okay, in my opinion, it was taken into consideration, and finally our mayor decided, okay, let's leave it, let's stay. They also see the benefits, and we can see that number of cyclists in the city increased really during the pandemic time. So also because of this temporary lanes, also because some permanent infrastructure was opened. So I saw in statistics that really number of cyclists was at the same level as year before, but before pandemic. So if you have a decrease of number of trips by car, like, I don't know, 10 or 20%, the cyclists were the same. So it means it's actually increased, yes, if we have lockdowns and so on. And yeah, but it's still not closed debate. It's always the same arguments that if there's less, so few cyclists, then we don't need an infrastructure for them. And in my opinion, we always say what I mentioned is not the way that we treat like that. People who want to cycle, yes, it's for them. And of course, there's other argument, general argument. It's not that all of us, you want from us that all of us will cycle.
Right.
No one really push you to cycle. Yeah?
Yeah.
It's your choice. But if we want your choice, then we need to provide infrastructure and give you the opportunity. So,
right.
But debate is open and for sure not finished, and we need to talk and discuss it more.
What are there any other debates that are currently going on, like some of the main mobility controversies in the city?
Yeah, we are in front of the low emission zone, and it's called a little bit strange in Poland because it's called clean transport zone.
Yeah.
So it is it's according to the Polish law. It was called so-called in the national law, but it means possibility since December last year. We got possibility to create a low emission zone, and now we started a debate, public debate, how it should look like, what should be the rules, what kind of Euro norms should be implemented at the first stage, which must be introduced in 2023, the end of this year, maximum beginning of the next year, because the program to clean air program for the whole voivodeship, for the whole region, it's also a law, and they signed, they provide to the city the law that we have to introduce this zone. So it is good because we don't have any options, but of course it's a debate in the country which average age of cars is like 11 or 12 years old, so many old cars, yeah. And still, from the economy point of view, not much that people do not have budgets for the newer cars, yes, and so on from dealers. Then it's a really tough debate, and we need to somehow try to find out a compromise between a goal, because people really want to have a clean air and in the city. So we need to make steps and to do something within the road transport, which is also emissions, like as much as it was from the coal heating and so on. But on the other hand, taking into consideration all the social aspects, economical aspects, people need to work, they need to go to the hospitals, yes, and so on. So it's a tough debate in front of us this year, but I hope we'll make a first step and then make a roadmap how to, I don't know, 2025, 2020, 2030, a goal to reach levels of emissions which are really low, and the air quality would be much better than now.
Is this at all related to, there's a climate quarter? This was also a new thing, the climate quarter in the city?
No, climate quarter is a maybe it's not a difference. I really like the description that when you talk about CO2 emissions and the climate crisis, it's the same coin with the air quality, but a different side. Yeah, so the same goals, but from the point of view of making some activities, but of course it's a different story than CO2 and NOx and PM. Climate quarter is a concept, is an initiative actually for the specific part of the inner city area, which based on two main assumptions or issues. First is that it was an area with many, it is actually area with many investments, which are already in the phase of implementation or during the almost creating a project and almost implementation. So it's the rebuilding of street over there, a huge investment of new railway, metropolitan railway tracks, together with the new train station, inner city area train station, which will be as much important as the main station, giving a completely new opportunity from the mobility point of view for inhabitants up there and all other inhabitants in the city, in the metropolitan area, in the regional area, to come to this place, yeah, because there's a new train station and gives you 5 minutes walk to any place up there. Also, a new bicycle infrastructure. We call this, let's say, bicycle way, yes, over the river to the south part of the city, which is under construction. So we thought there are squares, there are many small interventions, and we thought, okay, let's try to talk about this, all of these investments in the integrated way, in the comprehensive way, that people will not see one investment here, one here, and they don't connect it, yes? But we can see that from the point of view of the mobility, all of these issues is systematic, is something, it's one system, yes, and giving huge opportunities. And yeah, and we planned a master plan for that, and showing what else should be done. One of the main goals were most important was to convince people to stay there, because migration to the suburbs, to the communes around the city was strong before pandemic, and pandemic brought even stronger, yes. And people were moving and still are moving from the city. They need a house, they need a small garden, yes, because living during the lockdowns in a flats, small flats, were terrible. And of course, it also show how small green areas are important close to your place where you live, yeah? And gaps about it, missing it was really annoying for people, and it means the more poor quality of life. So that's one of the goals, that we wanted to ask people what they need to stay there, yes, what they really need to stay there. And of course, the lifestyle at the end gives you the mobility behavior. So if you have supermarket, if you have kindergarten, you have a green place, a theater, everything, yeah, then it's a concept of 15-minute city. Then you don't need to use the car to go to the supermarket to the other district. If you have a train station, you don't need to go by car to Wieliczka or Skawina or whatever. Yes, and that was the goal. Right now we have a master plan. We want to make some first implementations. People indicated, first of all, green areas for sure. Then over tourism, so short like Airbnb booking, which is very for people living there. And of course, many smaller issues which have to be done, and all of these aspects were taken to the scope of climate change, because Krakow, in the meantime, signed the declaration to be climate neutral within 2030. So we treat this project, this initiative, as a pilot project for the future of this, for the future goal for the city. Let's make all these activities, preparing and implementing a 15-minute city concept, all these changes. But at the end, let's try to make a zero emission district. Yes, I mean neutral. Of course, there will be still emissions, but with neutrality. So we absorb as much CO2 as we produce in this area. We'll see. It was a concept focused on the climate, on CO2, but the same coin. When we have on one side we are able to provide solutions concerning the climate crisis, and we need to save some CO2. Then on the other side of the same coin, we have a reduction of NOx emissions and PM. So we treat this, but the goal was focused on CO2 and on climate, water, and 15-minute city concept.
Briefly, you mentioned parks and small green areas and how that's really important. From my very short time living in this region, I see a lot of investment in the parks and playgrounds, and I follow a lot of accounts, and I'm noticing a lot of investment in small spaces all around the city that are dedicated to greenery and leisure and parks. So that's really wonderful, and they're beautifully designed spaces. I think Krakow is doing really beautiful work in this area.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's really nice. But when we talk with inhabitants out there on the climate quarter, it shows that there's many green areas like boulevards in parallel to the river, close to the river. There are some green parts, but close to the churches, which are actually not open public, yes, because it's private. Right. Let's say truthfully. So if you really live somewhere there and think, okay, I live in a flat, I got a small kid, I need to, I call my friend, let's meet somewhere. You don't have a place within, and that's a standard, 2-3 minute walking to the place where you can sit. There's green, there's an area, public places to sit, to have close some cafe or something like that. Water, if it's like small garden, yes, with water would be perfect. Some fontaine, something like that. And really, people are missing that. Yes, that there should be every maybe 300-500 meters. There should be the spot with this possibility, and that's what we are focusing at. Yeah, that's people have this for their own. If they just think about it and want to move out from the flat. It's very close. It's just that you walk out. It's almost like a private garden. Yes, it's always like in front of your house. If you are in the suburb, you have it very close to the place when you live. Not that you have to walk, even if it's, I fully agree, very nice, but you have to walk like 10-15 minutes. Yes, and okay, it's not so bad. It's too hot or something like that.
Right.
But of course, that's why there's this connection. Yes, if you want to walk even this 2 or 3 minutes, you need to walk safely. You need to walk you need to go through the walkable street, yeah, to this place. So it's together. Yes, spot is one issue, a sidewalk is the second issue, safety on the street is the third issue, and all of these issues at the end is the quality of life, and the people think, okay, it's a nice place to live, and we'll stay here. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That quality of life. I mean, having lived in areas where I had where I had that, especially as a parent. I'm glad you mentioned that too. When you're, cooped up in a small apartment space with a really, energetic young children, it's really a relief to have a place to go to very nearby that's green and, or even if you don't have children. So I think that's a great standard you set to even just 2 to 3 minute walk to somewhere like that is a really that's a great aspiration. Will make Krakow even better. Yeah. So we're coming soon to the close of the interview. One of the last questions I have, I've read a few interviews you've done. And in one interview, you noted that there's too much motorization in the city, which we've discussed now in this talk, and that I think there can be a tendency to blame municipalities for conditions which we see on the road, which of course the city has a very central role, in traffic management and transportation planning, but inhabitants also have roles in our mobility choices. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of people within the city, they're driving short distances. To me, I look at it as a spectrum. Of course, the city, your agency plays a critical role in providing, safe infrastructure for cycling, for walking, safe, efficient, affordable public transportation, et cetera. But then we as residents have our role to play also in being aware about our mobility choices and how we're moving around. So what are your thoughts on this? The role of municipal agencies such as yours that offer and encourage safe options for walking, cycling, and public transit, but also the responsibility of citizens to choose sustainable mobility options as much as possible.
Yeah, I think yeah, mobility is one of the together with education, with health system, is one of the main aspects of living in the city. So it every day everyone travel, almost everyone, let's say, yes, but let's say 80% of people need to travel from point A to point B, from their home to the place of work or where they school or university, yes? And then it means that whatever you do within the scope, if it's public transport, walking, cycling, it's traffic management, when something goes wrong at the first point, if you are Mr. or Mrs. Smith, sorry, something is flying over me, and you think, okay, I'm stuck in the traffic, your bus is late, sidewalk is I don't know, unpaved, or it's dirty and something. You always think first fault is okay. It's the municipality, it's the city, it's the fault. In many aspects, yes. City is to provide the possibility to travel from point A to B. We need to move, but on the other hand, it's really difficult to argument to say and to convince people that sometimes it's also about the behavior. Yes, I always say, okay, when you talk about behavior, changing your behavior is very difficult. When, for example, you compare how much time we need to understand that we need to save the water. Yes. In past, or we need to recycle waste. Yeah, and recycling is one of the good examples. It's at the end, it's up to you. It's up to the person if you do it or not, right? City will not do it instead of Mr. or Mrs. Smith. Yeah? It's your choice. It's your what you do. But what we have done, we make a different prices of the waste management if you recycle or not. So you need to pay twice or 3 times more if you don't recycle. And someone will say it's not democratic. It's my freedom. If I don't want to recycle, why I pay more? Yes, but we present solutions which force you a little bit. Maybe it's not a good word, force, but push you to do something which is good from the point of view of the whole society, from the environmental point of view, all Earth point of view, and so on. Yeah? And it is the same with the mobility. Yes, that we Of course, we need to provide solutions which are the same, pushing you from the car, to use different modes of transport. And it's not especially at the first stage, people are, it's my freedom, I want to travel by car, so leave me alone. Yes, it's democracy. If I want, I will. And then, of course, when they stuck in the traffic, it's a fault of they blame city because there are traffic lights. Red is lightning is flashing too long, but I always see just the same, the one entrance to the street crossing. I don't see that there are 4 entrances, and if I have a red, someone else have a green. Yeah? There's not much. There's not enough lanes on the street, and so on. Yeah, so I think it's the first stage of blaming, but there is a reflection after that, because people are not stupid. People see how it looks like. People see the city. People see the streets are narrow or not. They also see that since 20 years we built new roads. We built every year new roads, and nothing changes. When they were saying, "Okay, let's make some flyover and it's gonna be better," and they see it's not better. Yeah, new investment means new cars and so on. So I think the reflection is already in the minds, and even if they still blame the city, they see that it's not that how to say it, that the solution is what they think about it before. Yeah, to construct, for example, and they see what are the arguments right now. It's okay. I need a bus 3 times more than now. Do something to fasten buses, do something to fasten public transport, create a better sidewalk, and so on. So more and more since last 5 to 10 years, at least 5 years, since last 5 years. 5 years ago when you put out cars from the sidewalk, it was like, oh my God, it was my parking place. Now people ask the city to do it, yes? So the change in behavior, mind change, is really happening right now, and I hope after that is coming the situation where we convince ourselves for the behavior change, not to blame all others, but to convince ourselves. And of course, city is responsible to provide alternatives. So we need to have a really good public transport. We need to be a walkable city in the meaning of safe, effective sidewalks, and so that you don't afraid to let the children to the school walking. You need a cycle infrastructure. That's an alternative. That's what people should expect from the city. But at the end is the behavior. Nothing else. It's just the behavior. If people will not change it, if comfort of traveling would be the first, cars will be always the most comfortable. If there's no rain on your head, there's music, there's air condition, and you are sitting. It's always, of course. But of course, on the other hand, we know what negative aspects are for the whole society living in small space like the city, of traveling, that everyone is traveling. Major part of inhabitants are traveling by cars. So yeah, I think it's like that, and we have this mind change and this behavior change within the next years, maybe not months, but years, and I hope it will happen. But on the other hand, it's that now I saw we should talk in reality. It's too much in when we talk about public transport, about transport system in the cities, about urban mobility. I deal with that like for 15 years, so at the university, in the city, and there's so much. We call this that it's talking and talking. Yes, the water, just talking about the water. I mean, everyone says yes. We need to make a better public transport. we need to make trams. But at the end of every talk, 9% people go out and enter the car and move by car. Yeah, and it's reality is here, and talking and management of the urban mobility is here. Yeah? And there was an audit, I don't know if you have seen it, 1 year ago for the European Commission was presented an audit about urban mobility, because European Commission and European funds were, since last 2 decades, were like billions of euro, yeah, trillions of euro in every cities around European Union to change the model splits, yes, to change people behavior within the mobility, less cars, lifestyle dependent lifestyle and so on. And it's not Krakow, it's not Polish cities, it's about whole European Union. Mm-hmm. And the results are I mean, dramatic. I mean, there's no change. We spend billions of euros, and within and some just examples like, I don't know, Copenhagen, Amsterdam, right now maybe Paris or something. But when you take hundreds of medium and large size cities around Europe, there's no change. Yes, and it doesn't change that we construct new tram lines. Yes, there was no major change in our mobility behavior. And on the other hand, we talk about climate crisis, about CO2 reduction, and we see a tragedy at the end and completely destroying the planet. And it's like in the movie, yeah, Don't Look Up. It's like we spent billions and okay, happens, and maybe in future, maybe when we construct a new park and ride, it's gonna change. No, at the end, it's the behavior, it's the lifestyle. It's a huge revolution, in my opinion. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that when we spend billions of euros, it's gonna change. Yes, that if there will be a new railway line, it's gonna change. We need to come back to the reality with urban mobility management and saying truth. Okay, car is more comfortable. Saying truth, yes, a lot of people need to use the car. It's not we blame anyone for that. But on the other hand, we need this real solutions and real change. Otherwise, next 20 years, and we are going to talk, spend another billion of euros, and at the end, it's going to be the same or even worse. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit summing up of the situation and the future, in my point of view.
Well, I know, first of all, we are almost out of time. I know that you have to end soon, but I'm really glad that you mentioned all this. So my suggestion is that we have another talk later this year, because I really want to get into sort of at the heart of pedestrian space is ideas of behavior change and how we reach people in their minds, and how, I remember being car dependent. I was just talking to somebody earlier this morning, and I said, even if public transportation became free when I was car dependent, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't care if it was, 20 zloty or 0 zloty to ride. I had my car, and I wasn't going to change my behavior. But when I experienced a walkable lifestyle for the first time, when I experienced great public transit, I personally love it. However, you're always going to have people that are going to probably always be really attached to car as their mobility choice. But I think there's a lot of people who there's the potential to change, but they also don't know. They're not used to it. I mean, I think it took me a couple months in this region before I got on the light rail, because I was nervous about, I was new to the language, and I was nervous about, making the wrong choice with the fare. So I just walked everywhere, but I'm crazy about walking. So, but not everybody's like that. And then finally I started using the light rail, and I just love it, and it's interesting you mentioned that even when you build the new trams, I know so many people that are passionate about trams that, wow, I really commend the city. You seem to be doing a lot of investment with trams and light rail.
It's something what we can be really happy about, because the tram network is really convenient. It really gives you an opportunity to travel fast, to travel in a comfortable way. Metropolitan Railway will be the same, really giving an alternative, but for the wider area of communes around the city, between the communes. But it's still, 10,000 people or 20,000 people lives close to the train stations for the metropolitan. Yeah? 20. It's a 1.5 million in metropolitan area, and 20,000 lives close to the train station. So it will be very good for many people, but it won't be a game changer. Still, I'm sorry, but I don't believe it. It's gonna help, but it's like, you know, taking water from the basement during the flood. Yeah? And so it's still, what we need is more revolutionary change of what you said, but it's coming from many issues, from lifestyle, from what we see the future, care about children, environmental care, yes, which was in a very poor standard in Poland. We didn't care about the environment since many years, and now it shows up, yes, that we are afraid about the future because we see thunderstorms during the and floods during the summertime, and someone is asking, okay, my friend's house was flooded, and okay, let's talk about it. Maybe what is the reason? Yes, they started to interest in what is doing. So I really I don't want to depreciate this. It's very important to have this metropolitan railway, to have the tram network, to extend it, to make it more comfortable, more innovative, and so on. But still, my opinion would be not enough to make a shift, yes, a change, and to create really change in, for example, motorization rate, that we do not have 700, but we have, you know, 350, 400, like in cities, some cities in the world. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I always think positively optimistic, so I hope it's gonna be in there. And workability, what you mentioned, is one of the most important issues, also because of the activity. And the pandemic shows also the activity aspect, that we want to be active more. We sit all day in front of our laptops, only telcos. Then at the end, 30 minutes of walking to home, it's like, you know, fresh air and freedom. Yes, that you can move.
Freedom. Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to come back and talk more. Another talk about the freedom aspect. You know, there's the car dependence in, as you mentioned, all over Europe. I mean, even that's fascinating what you mentioned, all the investment and still no change. So I really, really value your perception and your sort of laser focused understanding that there's kind of a revolutionary change needed. That's really exciting to hear you talk. So we're coming to the end, so we'll circle back, maybe talk to you later this year.
Of course.
Maybe take a tram ride together or something.
Yep.
But okay, great. And we like to end on the city ratings. So I don't know if this is going to be challenging for you due to your role. So it'll be fun, and it's not a fix. So we do the city ratings. I think with everything we've talked about, we have to do walkability, public transit, and cycling. And the ratings are not scientific scores. You know, it's something, you know, you can share with friends, you know, Friday, you know, after evening, or with your family while you're eating dinner, and just talk about, like, I rated the city this way. How would you rate it? And scores can change over time too. I think this is just a really interesting way to kind of get a picture of what people think of the walkability in their city. So 1 is the lowest and 10 is the highest. So starting with walkability, how would you rate Krakow?
Maybe too optimistic, but I will give 7. I mean, it's, when I compare even with many cities, doesn't matter in Poland or whenever around the globe, in my opinion, we are really strong about walkability. Of course, it's not perfect, but especially when you compare with other cities, it's really, really better. And what we have done, it's like, just as a remark, I didn't even expect it that turning out all the traffic signals in the city center, that you don't need to wait 2 minutes to wait for the green light in the city center. It's something really, really great. I mean, that's, we try to make better sidewalks, no parking on sidewalks, minimum wide of the street. So yeah, 7 would be what I score.
Mm. Yeah, I like that score because it also shows room to improve, but that it's got a really good foundation. Okay, what about public transit?
Maybe 1 less, 6. When you it's different when you compare trips to the inner city area, like when you have access to the tram, but it's really different if it's just a bus and you live in the outskirts and you need to travel not to the city center. So when you make here would be like to the city center, I would give even 8. But when you got the outside area, it's like 5 or 4. So in the middle, it's like 6.
Yeah, that's great. I live in the outskirts and I can I can reflect on that when I go to the city. Yeah, the time between the outskirts and getting to the city can be rough, but once you're in the
Yeah.
city, it's like zip zip. So that's great that you averaged it out too. Okay, and then ending off on cycling.
Oh, here, yeah, it's still well 4 or 5,
Mhm.
but it would be optimistic because it's the less. I mean,
Right.
so maybe 4 to be more proof.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that we are missing a basic cycling network. So without this, we cannot say we are a cycle city or we are cycle friendly. It's even that we made a lot of efforts and implement this infrastructure right now. But if you want to be truthfully speaking and to be fair, more is in front of us than behind us. So 4 would be. Yeah.
To know on that, what I'm hearing too, though, is that some cities that are very noteworthy for cycling aren't necessarily noteworthy for pedestrian networks. So I think this is interesting to look at Krakow's current strengths, which is really great pedestrian infrastructure and connectivity, and it seems to only be getting better. Um, so.
Mhm.
So let's end on that question. What do you think are the strengths in the city in terms of the pedestrian infrastructure and connectivity? It's already pretty strong. You rated it a 7. What needs to be done for it to improve?
We need to make changes in local districts where cars are occupying every free space, green space, and so on. City center is in the scope of that really much better. We got sidewalks are really it's just few examples you would find where cars are occupying parking on the sidewalks. We got all Old Town. It's a pedestrian area with priority to pedestrians, no traffic lights and so on. So my opinion is really good. But when you go outside, I mean not the city outside, but local districts, some housing areas, which are many times in these are small communes where streets are not owned by the city. Then it's sometimes a disaster. I mean, the cars are leaving like 30 centimeters to walk, or even no centimeters. You need to go on a street, unsafe pedestrian crossings, and yeah, it's not a walkable part of the city, and we need to also to change it. But the problem is that people own the cars and they want to park it, and it's not the public space many times. So you need to collaborate somehow because it's city cannot say what you have on a private property.
Okay,
But
sometimes the sidewalk is sometimes
yeah,
private property.
yeah,
Okay.
sidewalk, and also streets are owned by the communes, so it's a private streets actually. But you know, from the point of view of inhabitants, it's the road to work. Yes, so doesn't matter if it's owned by the city or not. It's not walkable.
Right. Right. Well, this was really interesting. Thank you very much. And I look forward to talking with you again you brought up so many interesting issues, and I really like your vision and everything that your agency is doing. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for invitation, for a very nice talk, and hope to see you soon.
Yes, you will. Thank you.
Thank you.